horses. Here's a curious creature. I should have pointed out in the White River fauna. I'll just kind of quickly run back there. Oh, right here, there's an odd ungulate with, it's an even-toed ungulate related to camels and deers and the like. Here are the horses, by the way, with kind of bony protuberances on its face. It's a thing called Protocerus. Here we have a relative of that, something called Syndioceras. It's a little bit different. And this kind of illustrates one of the reasons that fossils change and that allows us to tell time, and that is they evolve. When we're talking millions of years, things change as a result of the evolutionary processes. Another reason that things change is that they are able to migrate in as the geography changes from Asia in most cases here. And that's an example that we can see that from these guys. These are called chalicotheres, and they're actually related to horses and rhinos, probably more closely related to horses, but they're a completely extinct group. But anyway, they have ties to things in Asia, and the same is true for these amphicyonids and some other things that show up here. So these exchanges between continents change the mammals that are present, which allows us to tell where we are in time. Here's everybody's probably familiar with the big pig here. It's not really a pig. It's a group called entelodonts that's extinct, but they look rather piggy. University of Nebraska Museum has some terrific specimens of this guy. Dinohyus is a name that's been given to it. There's other names too, though, that in terms of which is correct is more of a scientific detail. Here's a rhino. There's lots of these at Agate. And as I put in the Protocerus to compare it to Syndioceras here, just to remind you about this evolutionary change. These guys never got out of North America, and they are extinct. One of the things that you see up there at Agate Fossil Beds are these, they call them Demonalix, Devil's Corkscrew. And this is, maybe this case enclosing this is maybe 8 feet high, I think. So this is a fairly large structure, and there are, used to be a lot of them, but a lot of them were collected out by people, museums, and probably a fair amount of destruction as well. So they put this in a case to preserve it, because otherwise weathering would cause it to weather out and be destroyed as well. But this actually is a rodent burrow. When they first found these things in the late 19th century, early 20th century, there was a lot of argument about what they were. Some people thought they were plant roots of some weird kind, or they didn't even have a good sense of what the environment was like then. But they have found these with rodents inside the burrow, died in their burrow. And so it's pretty conclusive that that's what they are. All right, moving on from the Arikaree, here's the location where we can see Ogallala mammals well exposed, and that's at Ashfall Fossil Beds. This is, as I said, a catastrophic assemblage where all these rhinos and horses and a few other kinds of things, most of what you see here are rhinos, were killed by volcanic ash and buried by it probably in a waterhole kind of environment. From the Ogallala sample there and elsewhere throughout the state, we can reconstruct this ancient world. And we've got elephants, which came in from Asia a little bit earlier than this, but after the Arikaree. A couple different kinds of rhino. This this thing here is Teleoceras, and here, which is the rhinos that are so abundant at Ashfall. But there are also other kinds of rhinos that are found there. A couple of kinds of horses. Here's one kind, another. The artist has given them different coat colors to distinguish them. Of course, we have no idea what those might be, but there are differences in the skeleton that allow you to easily tell them apart if you're a paleontologist. Peccaries, bone-crushing dogs. This is a cat over here, and here's a rodent. And these guys, Myrmidons, are probably related to pronghorns, which is why they've chosen to give them that kind of color pattern. And you notice that we got these slingshot nose things. This is called Synthetoceras. And I think, yeah, so just for comparison, here's our White River Protoceras, here's the Arikaree Syndioceras, and then here's the Ogallala Synthetoceras. Pretty clearly evolutionarily related things, but this is kind of the end of the line for these guys, so we don't have them around anymore. And then the broadwater fauna, and this is just before the Ice Age and on into the Ice Age. We get things like this, like ground sloths, which were here in Nebraska, but no longer have any representation here in North America. In the background, you see some mammoths, and then we have camels and horses and peccaries and giant beavers and all kinds of things. Looks rather familiar to modern world environments in this area. Excuse me. But for the sloths and the elephants and the camels. Interestingly enough, horses and camels actually evolved in North America and were isolated here for a long time before they got out to the rest of the world, and then became extinct in North America. The horses only being reintroduced after the Europeans came here. And then in the Ice Age, we have Nebraska has a fabulous representation of Ice Age mammoths. Even though the ice only covered the easternmost part of Nebraska, north-south line that runs more or less just this side of York is kind of the limit of the ice. West of there, it was never glaciated, but the mammoths didn't live on the glaciers anyway. In fact, these big mammoths that we have a lot of specimens of probably did better in between the times when the glaciers were advancing, in the interglacials, as they call them. This is a big bison skull, and bison are pretty widespread too. But anyway, about the mammoths, I think there are mammoth fossils from every county in the state. They're not always whole skeletons, they're just teeth and things like that. But wherever you go in Nebraska, there have been mammoth fossils found there. Hence the need to have an elephant hall. So enough about the kind of general review of the ancient worlds of Nebraska. I wanted to come back to the Eiseley part again and look at this area in particular. And this is the part I was talking to Bing about, that this is our Bing and George's big adventure, going out and trying to find the locations. One of the most memorable poems of Eiseley's is called The Innocent Assassins, and you can see a lot of representations of it in various places. And the thing is that that's actually based on a real specimen. It was collected here in the Wildcat Hills, which is in this area. So here's the North Platte coming up along here. And Scotts Bluff is right there. The town of Scotts Bluff, and Scotts Bluff, the bluff is down here. And then the Wildcat Hills run along this line here. So we're going to zoom in and take a look at that. Here's the innocent assassin skull. And the thing that's so striking about this is that what we have is the skull of what you might call a saber-toothed cat. It's strictly speaking not a cat. It's a Nimravid. In fact, it is the genus Nimravus itself that this belongs to, which is a group of cat-like carnivores that are more closely related to cats than they are to, say, dogs, but they're not cats. But anyway, before it died, just before it died, it had bitten into the arm bone. This is the upper arm bone. The shoulder joint would have been up here, and here's the elbow joint down here, of another of its kind. They apparently were very scrappy and would get into these serious arguments often. So it was unable to dislodge itself, or perhaps it and the cat that it was attacking both fatally wounded each other, and they died. Anyway, Loren Eiseley was part of the field party that collected this specimen, and it really struck him, so that years later he wrote the poem "The Innocent Assassins." Here's a picture from the only scientific paper that's been published about this specimen, and you can see that as it was photographed there, it doesn't have this whole humerus attached to it. This is probably as it was collected, and then they collected the rest of the humerus along with it, but it was only later that they reconstructed it. Here's the way they had it displayed at the museum, at least for a time, with a mirror so you could see both sides clearly. And here you can see, again, that upper arm bone is biting into it close to the shoulder. It's kind of interesting because this does have the locality information here. This MO109 is a little shorthand that people who are collecting fossils put on to make sure that they can relocate the quarry that they found it. And I think this, if you look closely at this writing down here, it's something 32 SP, and it could be 32 is the year and SP is South Party. I'm not sure about that. Morrill is the county, I think. So they would write that on the specimen itself to make sure that the information didn't get lost.